What's the Bahamas doing in the fight against COVID?
We're empowering Bahamians with free testing, free masks, and access to doctors for answers to your questions. Vaccines and boosters are saving lives. We have tighter restrictions at our borders, and we're expanding hospital capacity and hiring more nurses and doctors. We're taking on COVID while reopening schools and keeping our economy moving.
Together, we're moving forward.
With the vastly reduced numbers of infections and hospitalizations, we will relax a number of the restrictions. Cruise ships no longer need to present a passenger and crew manifest disclosing vaccination status. We have reduced testing requirements for day 5 post-travel. Residential care establishments are now able to set their own parameters for visitors. Salons, barbershops, and spas will now be allowed to operate at 50% of seating capacity. Restrictions regarding recitals, regattas, in-person conferences, seminars, or workshops, and drive-through cookouts will be relaxed. These events will not require submissions for review and approval by the advisory committee. Restrictions surrounding large events will also be eased. The Ministry of Health will provide more comprehensive details regarding the measures.
Good morning, media colleagues and those joining us via the stream. It is a pleasure to welcome you to the Office of the Prime Minister's weekly press briefing. I want to take this time to say Happy International Women's Week to all of the females in the room and those joining us via the stream. I hope that this week you felt valued, because what it is that you do, whether you are a mother, whether you're a journalist, whatever it is that you do in our community, you should feel valued because you are so important and so vital. We have an exciting press briefing scheduled for you today. So without further ado, I will introduce Press Secretary Clint Watson.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you again, Jillian, and I concur with Jillian in wishing all of the women of this country a happy International Women's Day. We value your contributions and what you do to make our country the great country that it is. And to all of you female journalists in the room, to take nothing away from our male journalists, but happy Women's Day to all of you too for your contributions to our noble profession. As Jillian said, we do have a couple of things we want to get to you today, and those of you joining us watching this broadcast. And of course, a couple of those things really stems around, obviously, the budget communication for the mid-year budget being presented this past week in Parliament. And the Minister of Economic Affairs, Senator Michael Halkitis, will just come and address a couple of concerns that have come out from that. And so he will do that. And then, of course, we'll talk about the all-important topic that many people are talking about today, which is violence and relationships, domestic violence. And in light of the unfortunate incident that took place last night, we hope to have someone from the Crisis Center who will address us today. And then we have a couple of important announcements to give you. And then, of course, I always call it our Down Home segment, where we feature outstanding Bahamian food businesses and what they're doing in our country and sharing those with our community today. We have two exciting businesses to talk about today. So let's get right down to it. Without further ado, the Minister of Economic Affairs, Senator Daniel Michael Halkitis, to make some clarifications and explanations, particularly in light of concern expressed by the opposition in a recent press release explaining and questioning Goldman Sachs' financial transaction and questioning how the government is going about that. He wanted to clarify and to explain what is happening with that. So we're going to invite the minister to come down and do that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Watson. Good morning to all members of the press. Good morning to the public watching. As Mr. Watson said, the opposition released a statement that was reported in the press today, raising some questions about the recent repo transaction and asking the question whether the government was having difficulty raising funds so that we had to engage in such a transaction. The very first point I want to make is that the government of the Bahamas is having absolutely no difficulty in raising money. Unfortunately, this is a narrative that is being pushed by opposition and opposition forces, but there's absolutely no truth to that. The primary objective of our debt management strategy is to lower the cost of our debt. Secondarily, it's to manage the maturity profile. And the repo transactions are not some convoluted exotic structure, but they play a significant part in global financial markets every day. The repo transaction allowed the government to leverage the assets of the sinking fund while continuing to receive income on those assets and continuing to invest in and grow the sinking fund. No payments will become due from the sinking fund during the term of the repo, so there's no question of assets not being available for debt repayment. In addition, and this is important, the rate of interest on the repo is 2.4%. You will recall that the bond issue done by the former administration, the rate was 8.95%. They went out for $600 million at 8.95%, and then went out for an additional $225 million at 8.95%. So a total of $825 million borrowed at 8.95%. This repo transaction, I repeat, the interest rate is 2.4%. So we are managing our profile to reduce the cost of the debt. We'll be using a number of different instruments to do that. 8.95% versus 2.4%. The second point I wanted to address in relation to that statement that was issued by the opposition is their assertion that there are contradictory statements coming out of the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs, because I said we are not going to market imminently with a bond issue, and they state that they have information that we are preparing to go to market for a bond issue. And so just for the information of the opposition and for the information of the Bahamian public, every single bond issue involves months and months of work. So the fact that we are making preparations for in the event and for the time that we eventually do go to market, there is absolutely nothing contradictory about that. Going to market is a very involved process. It involves gathering information, writing a prospectus. There's work that lawyers have to do. It involves gauging the interest of the market, what type of transaction they would like. It involves even going on a road show to doing a sales job about the offering. So the fact that we are making preparations so that when we eventually do go to market, we will be ready and we will be prepared. There's absolutely nothing contradictory about doing work in preparation. When we are ready to go, we will have all of the work done. And so I just wanted to put those things into the public domain. There's nothing sinister going on here. Totally transparent. We published the transaction, and it's all part of our strategy, mainly to lower the cost of our debt and to get a better maturity profile. I'll say once more, the interest on this transaction is 2.4%, as opposed to 8.9%, and you can do the calculation and see what the difference is. And so those are the 2 points I wanted to raise, just to bring that clarification, and I'll answer any questions you have. As you know, the Prime Minister gave the mid-year budget statement this week, Wednesday. The debate begins on this coming Wednesday, and he will elaborate more on the government's policies and the performance so far. We're encouraged by the strength of the economy and the financial performance, and we look forward to continued strengthening of the economy and continued financial performance. Questions? Mm-hmm.
My question is not on the Goldman Sachs issue, but something else that came out of the Prime Minister's address this week. the $1 billion, the nearly $1 billion in liabilities. How does
Yes,
the government
900 plus million, yeah.
Yes. How does the government plan to tackle that?
The 1 billion is made up of a variety of things. There were monies owed to vendors. There were loans coming due that have to be addressed within this fiscal year. And so what we are doing is we are scheduling payments to the vendors to liquidate, to settle those payables that we have. We're doing that over a period of time. And we're making financial arrangements to where the loans become due to refinance those. So it's a matter of scheduling the payments. These are obligations of the government of the Bahamas. Of course, they have been verified, and so it's now up to the government to just liquidate them as it becomes due. We can't do them all at one time, but vendors have been very understanding and patient as we move to eventually pay those off.
So it's likely they'll stretch across several budget cycles?
It's likely that they will stretch beyond the end of this budget cycle, which is in June. And as I say, given the extraordinary circumstances, the vendors have been very understanding in agreeing payment schedules with us.
I also wanted to ask a question in relation to those reports. We know that one of the things the Prime Minister spoke about was, I guess, financial discrepancies with NGOs, with the food cost program, money showing up after the fact and all of those things. Is this going to cause government to be a little bit more stringent in the process when partnering with NGOs before going forward with any agreements?
The main objective is to make sure in any circumstances, whether you're dealing with vendors or whether you're dealing with NGOs or whomever you're dealing with, to make sure that you have in place proper protocols and procedures and standard operating procedures so that the public purse and the public funds are safeguarded. And so we just have to make sure that those things are in place and adhered to so that when funds are dispersed, we can get an accurate accounting for it. And so it's in times like this, when you're emerging from a crisis, you're not out of the woods yet. Of course, you have to watch every single dollar in terms. That's the government as well as the public. So that just imposes upon us an additional discipline that we have to be very careful in how we operate.
Following that report, will there be formal reviews of current NGOs the government is working with?
That's constantly going on. Not only NGOs, but nonprofits. The government supports and gives subventions, and it's an ongoing process to make sure that you have standards in place so that the public can be confident that their money is going where we say it's going. That's it. Thank you so much.
Concerns, I guess, in recent weeks regarding inflation and the rising price of gas, the rising gas prices. Is there anything, or how are discussions going in that regard to try to mitigate the issue? I know a few weeks ago, the press secretary mentioned that the Prime Minister met with, I think, Saudi Arabia and to discuss getting some oil directly.
That was a meeting, and all those discussions are really in its infancy, and they would take some time. As I said before, we are a consumptive country. We import most of what we consume, and so when you see inflation in the United States at 40-year highs and the same in Europe, even before the conflict in Ukraine, and now you see that adding to the uncertainty. This is one of those things where things fluctuate. We're hopeful that the impact is not lasting. There's not much that we can do to influence those events other than as the government, first of all, ourselves, look at ways that we can conserve and to the public, look at ways that they can conserve, and hopefully the situation returns to some form of normalcy sooner rather than later.
What ways? You say ways to conserve?
Ways to conserve, like us. You conserve energy, conserve. Us. We're driving around in the government. How do we reduce that sort of footprint? Because in reality, no matter what, I don't want to say. In reality, the reality is we're a small country in a big world who import. All of these things are totally out of our control. So to sit here and think that somehow we can reverse them is unrealistic. The best we can do is through our behavior try and mitigate it as best we can. And we're hopeful that the disruptions are are soon sorted out. All right? Thank you so much. Thank you, Ms. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Alcides, for giving us that update and clarification. We appreciate that. And to Janelle's question, we have a little more that we'll say in this press conference regarding your question. I'll address that further for you as well. With some new information that has been brought to our attention moments ago. We're going to invite now Ms. Cleopatra Christie, the administrator of the Bahamas Crisis Center, to come and speak to us. And why this is important, and if you notice, this is a second visit here, is that every time they're in this country, there is a national attention drawn towards incidences of violence or domestic violence with women, or unfortunate incidents as reported like last night in the what is being classified as a suicide at this point of a young lady who would have been in a relationship that she talked about to the media about. There are concerns about what is being done or what are the recourse, what outlets are there for people, and we always like to carve out time in these national press conferences to address them, because I believe at the end of the day our people ought to know what's available to them, how to avoid incidences like this, and not wait until it becomes, in this unfortunate matter, deadly, and children are involved and are suffering from what they may have been exposed to. And I believe we ought to always take time out and have a national conversation to address prevention and what is available for help. And this is why we've taken time out of this press conference this morning to invite the Bahamas Crisis Center to address this very important issue. And then we'll continue on with some other national matters. But I want to invite Ms. Cleopatra Christie, Administrator, to come and address us on this subject at this moment. Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you very much, Press Secretary, for the invite of the Crisis Center here to share a few thoughts on this very important topic. And I say, here we are again, talking about the very same issue. But first of all, I'd like to express my condolences to the family of our latest victim. You would have been aware of the social media where she herself appeared and crying and telling this very sad story about the abuse that she was receiving in her life. I don't know the story firsthand. I only know what I've read on the social media. But she was moved to tears. She was insisting that the domestic violence had followed her, even though she had taken steps to remove herself from that relationship. She said that she was getting on her feet, and it followed her to her apartment where she now resided. But that is the problem with domestic violence. It is a perpetrator who is seeking to be in control and to control your life. So what do you do? And you know, we say, move, get out of it. It's not easy. It's a very complex situation. There are many variants that one must consider when you make this suggestion. Well, just move on, get out, get another house. But there are children to be considered, there's rent, there's whether the person has a job. It's a financial situation. How am I going to manage? How am I going to take care of my children? These are very important questions that someone who finds themselves in this kind of relationship must ask and have answers. But fortunately, in this particular case, this young lady, it appears, had reached her end, and she reached out and she said she got herself up. She got herself up and out and running. So what she describes is a very classic case of domestic violence. You're in a relationship, there's abuse, there's the beating, there's the kicking, there's all sorts of harm being done to you. And this person keeps coming back. Why is he coming back? What is he coming back for? He says he loves you, but remember, love doesn't hurt. So if you love someone, you certainly don't express yourself in this kind of way. But the behavior she described seemed to be domestic violence, and it is unacceptable. So what do you do? And referring to the same case, she referred to a mentor. It appears as if she had someone who she was able to turn to. Lots of people don't. So, yes, turn to your mentor if there's one. Tell somebody about what is happening in your life. Because one of the things the abuser doesn't want, he doesn't want you to tell others, and he doesn't want you to be in contact with family and friends. So, a mentor, a family member, talk about it and seek help. She spoke about referring the matter to the police, and you heard her comments about the kind of services she received from the police, social services, NGOs, the church, there's the Bahamas Crisis Center. All of these organizations, all of them offer services to women who are in these positions, who find themselves in these positions. And so, yes, there is help out there, but what about the neighborhood in which you live? What about family members? Can you speak with them? Can they help you get out? You must do something. You cannot stay there. Unfortunately, the Crisis Center, the Bahamas Crisis Center, offers counseling. We assist in short-term housing. The social services, again, offers short-term services, but again, it's not the ideal situation, short-term. If you're not working, a week, 2 weeks, a month is not sufficient. You need a longer period of time. You need somewhere where you can stay and be comfortable, take care of your children, ensure that your children are attending school, that they have food, that they have school uniforms and all of that, all of those necessary things. And so, yes, we must reach out. One of the things that we have, one of the services that we provide at the Crisis Center is that we have a 24-hour hotline. And this hotline runs day and night. And anytime that number is dialed, there is someone at the end of that phone who's you're able to speak to, and that person can offer advice. If it is late in the night, early in the morning, we can calm you down, counsel until day breaks. And then we can get into action about finding a place for you and your children to live. But the hotline number I'd like to leave with you, and that number is 328-0922. So if you know of anyone, please ask them, advise them, reach out, call the police, go to the closest or nearest police station. You can even go to the court. The court offers the services of a protection order. You can get a quick interim protection order, followed later by a protection order, a full-blown protection order. So there are ways and means that people who find themselves in these positions, these violent positions, that they must and they cannot, and they must and can seek help. So this type of behavior that this young lady describes on her social media towards her and women and girls, it's dangerous, and in some cases, it's deadly. And in this particular case, we don't know what led to her death or what caused her death. There is only the allegation out there, and I'm not here to speculate on that, but she is dead. And we do know that she suffered from domestic violence. Whether that caused her death, led to her death, but the trauma of the violence that she suffered in her life could have possibly led to what happened to her. That's why she's not here with us. And so with those brief remarks, I would answer any questions if you have any there.
Usually, in these circumstances and instances, we would speak to the women. What would you say to the men? Because usually it's the men who are, committing these acts against women. What would you say to them? And even the male community on how they can possibly help abusive men?
Well, yes, it is. Well, let me just make this point. 95% of domestic violence cases are perpetrated by men. And some men, a small percentage of men, suffer domestic violence. And so we're now addressing that large percentage of women who face domestic violence. There are services that I know that are out there for men, who I know that the courts in some instances have referred men for counseling. They've referred them for managing anger management. But there are services out there. But it's very difficult to get a perpetrator to say, I'm going to counseling, because he says there's nothing wrong with me. There's absolutely nothing wrong with me. And the only way that I find that you can address or reach someone like him is through the courts, where you have a court order and the court mandates that he attend some sort of counseling. But I'm not quite sure that anger management is the answer to his question, because this isn't necessarily about anger. Remember, this is about power and control. So, how is it that you're able to go to work and you function all right? You function with your buddies. But the moment you get through that door, all hell breaks loose. You attack your partner, your spouse, in the presence of your children. And again, trauma. She suffers trauma, the children suffers trauma. We at the Crisis Center, we offer a program for children exposed to violence. And we have lots of children, and they're referred to us from various schools throughout the islands. And so, yes, it's traumatizing to not only the person who's been abused, but also the children and other family members who live in that house. I trust I've answered your question.
Based on the children that come to you for trauma counseling, what have you seen over the years as they continue to come? Do you see the progress steady? Do they have a lot of relapses where they go back to that state of, I guess, horror or terror from the incidents that affected them?
Well, what we have seen, our program runs in line with the school year. And so we run from September straight through to June with those children. And we work with them, and we have qualified and professional therapists in our center. And we work along with those children. And if at the end of the year there is no improvement, because there isn't a magic button that you can press that would heal these children, not all of them. Some of them we say, well, we can release them and they can go back home or go back to the family member wherever they're staying. But others, it's an ongoing process. So yes, we have them, we take good care of them, we do the best that we can, but it's not a quick fix for children. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Administrator. We appreciate your you're coming here today and helping shed light on a very serious situation, particularly as we celebrate Women's Week worldwide, that we ensure that our women are protected and are respected in our country. And that is important not only for each of us as individuals, but an important mandate of the government and the Davis administration this morning. I want to get on to a number of announcements that we have for you that I believe are very important, and then we'll take your questions, colleagues, today. Obviously, last week we were at CARICOM, and we wanted to give you an update on that. Prime Minister Philip Davis and the delegation recently returned from the trip to Belize to the 33rd Intersessional Meeting of Heads of Government, the Caribbean community, and we wanted to give you an update on really what transpired there. As you know, this was the Prime Minister's first CARICOM meeting as Prime Minister, and I must say he made a very outstanding impression, good impression on behalf of the people of the Bahamas. He was welcomed warmly by regional leaders. In his address to his colleagues, the Prime Minister spoke about the importance of continuing the conversation about climate change, particularly as CARICOM countries are those most vulnerable to its effects. Prime Minister Davis urged regional leaders to continue to call on polluters to reduce carbon emissions. A big part of the solution, he said, would be regional leaders joining forces to advocate, not just for climate change, but in our shared concerns as well. And he is emerging, as we've said before, as a spokesperson in the region on climate change, having made several major interventions at international forums. People are looking to Prime Minister Davis for the ideas and solutions and ways out and issues that are affecting small island developing states like the Bahamas, and he is living up to the obligation and indeed representing our nation well. And we believe in the not too distant future it will yield fruitful rewards for our country because of his leadership and intervention. And of course, he went on to talk about the solutions being one on the regional level, not just for climate change, as we said, but for shared concerns. In his address, as you would know, he announced Sebastian Bastian, a businessman, who will become the ambassador to the country's Sitka, which really covers the Central American region. Overall, the trip was a success, as it is presently an opportunity for the Prime Minister to collaborate with those in the region. You'll be hearing a lot more on that in the near future. You also may not be aware, but we did release this late last evening, that the Center for Disease Control and Prevention has lowered the Bahamas' COVID-19 travel risk advisory rating from a level 4 to a level 3, which is indeed good news. The Minister of Health and Wellness, the Honorable Michael Darville, calling the new advisory very encouraging. While this news shows that the Bahamas is doing well in its fight against COVID-19, the Ministry of Health and Wellness encourages Bahamians to continue to follow those health guidelines until we are completely out of the woods. Let me reemphasize that. To completely follow these guidelines, follow the health guidelines until we are completely out of the woods. This will help with ensuring our economy and country returns to normalcy. This is the second time in 5 months that the Bahamas has been upgraded by the CDC. Let me say right here, because I believe this is important. As you see, we are now beginning to loosen the restrictions. The government is beginning to loosen the restrictions. It is important to note that as the restrictions are being loosened, it is more so incumbent upon us as individuals to follow the protocols. That minimizes any risk that can possibly cause a mass exposure as we try to get back to normalcy with events. So the best way to see these kinds of relaxations continue and to see the success of events as we're now allowing them to happen more and more, as the administration is allowing those things to happen, is to ensure that you follow the protocols so that we minimize any risk as a Bahamian people of anything happening. So please, as the restrictions are being relaxed, please continue to follow the protocols, wearing your mask, and of course, following all of the sanitization protocols, social distancing protocols, and ensuring that you have those medical grade masks on. So as a community, we can continue to be safe. I wanted to give you an update on testing as well, because that continues to do well and has been one of the driving forces behind the success that the administration is seeing in the reduce of COVID cases. Residents who need a test can register at covidtest.gov.bs. Let me let you know that right now. You can still be tested at one of the sites free of charge. Those sites are Marathon Mall, Kendall Isaacs Gymnasium, and Melia Nassau Beach Resort in New Providence, and Christ the King Hall in Grand Bahama. Since starting our free testing pilot program on January 8th, they've tested 80,277 people. Of that number, 1,832 of those tests were positive. The government continues to encourage people to get tested, as it is one of the tools, as we said, in using to not only measure our success, but fight against the pandemic as a Bahamian people. I want to give you an update on children's masks as well, because those are very important. Since beginning its mass distribution of medical grade masks several weeks ago, hundreds of masks have been given out through our partners at the Red Cross, Great Commission Ministries, Hands for Hunger, as well as churches, government clinics, vaccine centers, and testing sites. Medical grade masks better protect people from the coronavirus. That's why it's being expanded, and the distribution is expanding throughout the nation, especially to children. The Ministry of Education has received 100,000 KN95 masks to distribute to schools throughout New Providence, and the Family Islands distribution is well underway. And it's been encouraging parents to check with their schools for the child's free masks, because they are indeed available to you. And though case numbers are low, the talk is to remain safe, as we said, and wearing masks is still a part of that. In the coming days, the government will expand free mask distribution to Grand Bahama, Eleuthera, and Central Andros. Another important announcement to give to you, you would have remembered in 2017, former Cabinet Minister Kenred Dorset was arrested, and a number of charges were laid in relation to accusations of misconduct in public office. The witness, Mr. Jonathan Ash, indicated his intention to not testify. Therefore, the Director of Public Prosecutions, having been advised by the senior officer, having conducted the matter, signed a nolle prosecute in the matter of R versus Kenred Dorset. This means that the prosecution has insufficient evidence to proceed, and therefore the case is abandoned. And we have, I think that we have one, I think that's our announcements, yes. Let's take some questions, and we'll give you some more information on some things that you've been asking about. Let's begin. Berthany McDermott from R News. Hi, Berthany.
Good morning. To the announcement you made with a case for Ken Dorset, I understand, or can you confirm or speak to Ash refusing to testify because he was supposed to be paid $1 million that he claimed was outstanding from hurricane cleanups that he would have done back when? Are you able to say if that was the case, or if that was a conversation that would have been had?
I'm only privy to what I read. And so I would, for any further questions regarding that, to Attorney General Pinder. Let's go to Krishna. Hi,
Morning.
Krishna.
Good morning. So my first question is, how does the OPM or the Prime Minister respond to the former Prime Minister's very colorful use of language in the Tribune this morning?
Can you quote that for me? I don't think I remember seeing the Tribune. What was it he said? I'm not familiar with it.
I'd rather not. My mother wouldn't be too happy if I was to quote those things on national.
It was that extreme?
It was. But how do you respond, and how does the OPM respond to him saying that he intends to bust the government and the Prime Minister's ASS
do we have the
in the House
Tribune
of
so we
Assembly?
can, because I think a lot of people aren't familiar with it. You have it. Okay, well, let's get the Tribune. So the nation, who may not be aware of what you're referring to, can have clarity on what was said. We'll get that for you, and then we can try and put a response together for that. For Krishna's, Krishna's referring, I think, to an article that appeared in the Tribune this morning, Krishna?
Yes.
With a response from the former Prime Minister regarding statements made. She has it here. For those who may not be aware, Prime Minister said it's stupid, an immature statement, an irresponsible statement to be made by any Prime Minister, and I can't wait to get in Parliament to bust his ass and their ass for talking stupidness. Dr. Minnis. Okay. I think, first of all, the first thing we want to say is we're extremely happy that Dr. Minnis, who wasn't present for the communication because of sickness, has recovered well. We're happy that he has recovered, and we're glad that a day after the communication in Parliament, he's feeling better. So we're happy that the former Prime Minister is doing well. It's in the Tribune for those who wanted to see it. As far as a response to it, Prime Minister Davis was aware of what was said. I don't want to misquote him. I want to quote the Prime Minister. Quote, I look forward to it. Prime Minister Davis's quote, he looks forward to it. I'm sure the Bahamian people will have their opinion on the choice of language and expression by the former Prime Minister, particularly at a time where violence and crime is an issue in our country. It doesn't set the right tone. Some can consider it threatening. Some can consider it vulgar. Choice words are violent. And for a national leader to express that publicly is concerning. But Prime Minister says he waits.
And sort of a part B to the question, the Prime Minister came under a bit of a criticism for some of the allegations that were in his mid-year budget communication. There are some people who say that he didn't provide enough evidence to support his claims. How do you respond to that?
The Prime Minister will speak on Wednesday. This was a communication in Parliament to introduce the budget. The meat of the details, as has always been parliamentary procedure, always comes at the beginning of the debate and during the debate. The debate begins on Wednesday, and Prime Minister will substantiate and explain the claims that he has made. And so the Bahamian people need only wait for that debate to begin to have their say. It's interesting, though, that we see the opposition and other people so anxious to jump on it and you know, sometimes when you're so quick to get on something before there's been an opportunity to explain what you're referring to, it really suggests something different. But the Prime Minister is willing to substantiate it. Prime Minister Davis is not careless in his statements. When he makes a statement, he can substantiate the reason why he's speaking to what he's speaking to. And he will do that on Wednesday.
And then my final question is, also in the House of Assembly, the Social Services and Urban Development Minister, he mentioned that the AG had been locked in meetings on Wednesday morning, sort of drafting legislation that tackles gender equality. But he didn't too much elaborate on that. How far is that going to go? Can you say exactly what it is that this legislation is going to tackle?
No time frame yet, no parameters of it yet. What's happening, though, is consultation. There's a different approach that the Davis administration is using when it writes legislation. You would have heard the Prime Minister say last week that a number of amendments will be coming to Parliament this session because simply the laws were not ready. They were not written completely and comprehensively, and there are a number of challenges to it. Well, the Davis administration is ensuring that doesn't happen when it presents laws to Parliament. And so what you find happening is when you hear us talk about, you hear the administration talk about laws, what is happening is a great amount of consultation, fact-checking, talking to the experts as to what should be included, having dialogue before the law is actually presented or tabled in Parliament as a bill. And so that is what is happening right now. All of these bills and proposed bills are being checked, they're being consulted on, they're being ensured that the term and the writing is correct and accurate and will give the kind of result that the bills and the laws are intended to do. And that's what's happening. So we'll have more update on that for you as they move to the next stage. Thank you, Krishna. Let's go to Janelle. Oh, is it Tyler from Eyewitness News? Let's go to Janelle first, and then we go to Tyler from JCN.
Okay, firstly, I know that based on your comments just now about cases going down, it seems like government is going to be sticking with this mask mandate right now, but we know that CDC has also recently recommended that states with low cases don't need the mask mandate. Is this something we can see a move towards, particularly with these regattas and everything resuming come June?
Nothing's off the table. The government meets, and of course, you know, the Emergency Operations Committee meet regularly to determine whether there should be a loosening of certain protocols and what those protocols are. And so nothing is etched in stone. Today, there may be a mask mandate. Next month, there may not. Today, there may be a protocol in place, and next month, based on how things are, there may be a reinstatement. Nothing's off the table, and we move at a steady pace. As things change, we give them to you right away. We don't hold on them. We tell you right away if something's changed. Right now, we have a mask mandate in place. The health officials believe that's important right now. And especially as we're loosening protocols in other areas, that mask mandate becomes even so much more important. And as we see how that works, then there'll be opportunities to reconsider. But right now, it's what remains in place.
Also, in light of this incident that happened with the young lady, we know that recently the Attorney General did say that he would make recommendation for repossessed homes to be used as safe houses. Has there been any headway
met with that yet?
Logistically, the planning has begun, yes. Logistically, there is a strategy in place to ensure that we have homes available. Of course, we won't say how and when because, of course, it's a matter of protecting and security, and that will always remain. We won't say, well, so-and-so repossessed homes from Scotia will be used. No, we won't do that. We won't put anybody's life at risk, but the government has said, and they are absolutely serious about this, so they will do what it takes to ensure there are protections in place for people in the Bahamas when it comes to domestic violence. And it's something that's being worked on very feverishly to happen.
And then you said you had some information.
We're working through it. We're going to release it in a short time. We just want to make sure all of our I's are dotted and our T's are crossed regarding it. But like I said to Krishna, Prime Minister Davis will ensure that on Wednesday he can substantiate any claims that he's made, and you can rest assured of that. Yes, Bertha? Sorry. It's your turn, isn't it?
Sorry.
Let's get Bertha and then I'll come to you. Go ahead.
I wanted to ask about, in the House on Wednesday, the Prime Minister spoke to some findings from the forensic review into beaches and parks. Now, I know he would have said that the findings were overwhelming. Are there any plans to possibly take this to another level in terms of maybe getting police involvement to look into the matter?
What you see happening, Bertha, and I think it's important for everybody to understand this, because I know there's always this anxiety whenever reports are tabled and auditor reports show that there are some concerns of what has been transpired, how business was conducted. There's always this anxiousness, call the police. And then what happens? When you call the police, you say, yes, we're going to prosecute. And then, as you've seen in this case, we just announced a few seconds ago, you don't have the evidence, you don't have the witnesses, you don't have the solid case that you need for prosecution. But in the mainstream, when you've rushed it through, somebody's life and someone's family it faces undue and unnecessary stress and pressure and embarrassment because a case wasn't solidified. I say it again, Davis' administration is ensuring that every step it takes, it can legitimize and it can substantiate the move it will make. You've not heard the Davis administration talk about prosecution per se in terms of these cases, quite simply because it has to be completed. And to announce prosecution before a final summary would be premature and not be accountable governance. Once all of the evidence has been presented by the auditor and the report is complete, there is another stage. That stage is you now have to meet and determine, based on what we have here, that wrongdoing has been committed. Do we now have the evidence that if we go to court, we can substantiate what this audit report has said? Because remember, audit report just report what it has found. An audit report is not an investigation per se for criminality. It just says, here are the facts. Here's what exists. You now have to determine how are we able to prosecute if we want to pursue this avenue with evidence by people and by documentation. And once that can be determined, then that community will determine whether we call the police in and now decide to prosecute. You don't jump straight to prosecution based on an audit report. There is a process. And the Davis administration, in the fairness of all, will follow the process so that nobody is abused and no one's family goes under duress unnecessarily. We will follow the law. We will follow protocol, and that's what we've been saying all along. But there is a process, and we've not yet reached that process. Okay? Tyler, JCN, yes.
There have been a number of concerns raised by Ukrainians legally living in the Bahamas, saying that they're very concerned, obviously, about their friends and family who are in Ukraine, and they want to attempt to enter the Bahamas to come and live with their family. But they're saying that the process is very difficult. They have to visit a Bahamian consulate, and it's about probably a 2-week wait, in order to get a visa to legally enter the Bahamas and be able to stay. Is the government considering any kind of relaxation or anything for that to allow, just kind of a refugee status for those to come and visit or stay with their families who are legally living in the Bahamas?
I'm glad you raised that, Tyler. I had the opportunity to talk to the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Public Service, Honorable Fred Mitchell, this morning, who is traveling to a meeting in Washington. And he assured me that today at 2 o'clock, there is going to be a discussion and a meeting that he will report to Prime Minister on what will happen regarding sanctions, what will happen regarding what the Bahamas is prepared to do as far as any restrictions, as far as any assistance. All of that will be determined at 2 o'clock today. So I assume that we will be hearing shortly after to that, where the Bahamas' position lies regarding that. But it's something that the Foreign Affairs Minister is very much looking into so that we can provide more information for the Bahamian people. And that should happen sometime today. All right.
And my last question is, the director of the Pan American Health Organization on Wednesday, she was very adamant when she said that it's too soon for us to be lowering our guards as we hit, the 2-year mark with the pandemic. And Prime Minister Philip Davis just relaxed quite a number of restrictions. Any concerns with, outside opinions when it comes to us relaxing our restrictions?
Not at all. We work very closely with the Pan American Health Organization. We respect them, we respect their suggestions, but the Ministry of Health and Wellness makes the decisions for the Bahamian people. We make them based on our data, we make them based on what we see happening with our people, we understand our economy, we understand our country, and the government of the Bahamas will always make the best decision for its people. Doesn't mean that we won't take into consideration what other international organizations are suggesting, but they don't speak for the country. They don't speak for the Bahamas. We make our decisions based on what we see happening on the ground and what we believe is impacting our people. And we are quite secure in what our health officials have been recommending, and we take our cues from them. Okay. Any other questions? Great. Well, thank you. We want to move to our segment now where we get to highlight Bahamian businesses and what they are doing in our community, food businesses, and we're so happy to have two of them here today. The first one is called Taste the Flavor. I'm going to invite Bernique Popel to come and talk about her business, and then we're going to talk about Boiling Point and what they offer, and their brand ambassador, Ahmad Watson, is here to talk about that. So let's welcome Bernique Popel and Ahmad Watson to come and talk about what they have here for our media group treats today. Thank you.
Good morning. So Taste the Flavor is a local, authentic Bahamian homemade ice cream company that started in June of 2020. We started with about 7 flavors and now we're up to 14. We also include dairy-free as well as sugar-free flavors, and it started from a family tradition. So Grammys are the best. So I hope you guys do enjoy today.
Tell us how we can find you and we can learn more about it.
Yes, so we are on Instagram at Taste the Flav BAH, and we are on Facebook as Taste the Flavor Bahamas.
Tell them what you have for them today.
Today the flavors we have are butter pecan, guava, and soursop.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Come on. Oh, please.
Good day, good day. My name is Ahmad Watson. I'm here to represent Boiling Point. Boiling Point is a seafood takeaway restaurant that has been established by 2 foodies, self-proclaimed foodies, but they enjoy the flavor. They it's really scary because to see where they started and to see where they're at now is really beautiful. And their food is great. It's literally amazing. It's literally the best seafood boil that you can get around. It comes with corn, potatoes, and eggs. The Boiling Point is located at Market Street through Palm Tree Avenue, number 55. You can order many types of seafood meat. You have snow crab, shrimp, mussels, and lobster. For those whose taste buds are, not as developed, please come through to the Boiling Point. Please come and experience this seafood takeaway restaurant. Are there any questions that you may have? Okay, on our social media, you can find us at Boiling Point on Instagram at Boiling Point 242, as well as on Facebook, Boiling Point. Thank you. And our contact number is 466-6754. I do apologize. 466-6754.
Thank you, Ahmad. Let's continue to support our Bahamian vendors and businesses and make sure that our economies continue to grow and stay strong. Thank you, colleagues. Thank you, those joining in today. We look forward to keeping you updated here at the Davis administration. Thank you. Have a great day, everyone.